Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something, well, pretty fundamental. The connection between drinking water and changes in our weight, maybe even our waistline.
Yeah, it's a topic that comes up a lot, and we've got some interesting research to unpack here. It's from a study in clinical nutrition published a few years back, 2021.
Right. And it's important to know who they studied, isn't it? This wasn't just anyone.
Exactly. This study focused specifically on an older group, folks in the Mediterranean region, and they all had metabolic syndrome.
Okay, so that's a key bit of context conditions that raise the risk for things like heart disease, stroke, diabetes.
Precisely. It shapes how we interpret the findings.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to figure out, can simply upping your water intake actually help with weight loss or shrinking your waist?
Uh-huh. And also, what does the science say happens when you consciously choose water instead of other drinks?
Think of this as your quick guide, getting straight to the point of what this research found.
We'll break down the study, look at the results, and talk about what it might mean in, practical terms.
Okay, let's start with the who and how. Who exactly was in this study?
Right, so the researchers looked at over 1,800 people. They were between 55 and 75 years old, all living in Spain.
And they were part of a bigger study.
Yeah, the Pre-Diamond Plus study, which is a major ongoing project looking at the Mediterranean diet and health. And like we said, all these participants had metabolic syndrome.
And this was looking forward, right? A prospective study.
Yes, exactly. They followed these individuals for 2 years. They started by assessing how much plain drinking water people normally consumed right at the beginning.
How did they measure that? Just ask them.
They used a pretty detailed questionnaire, actually, a validated 32-item Spanish fluid intake questionnaire, so quite thorough.
Okay.
And based on that, they grouped people into 4 categories, basically from drinking less than 2.5 servings of water a day, all the way up to 7.5 servings or more.
And how big is the serving here?
Good question. They defined it as 200 milliliters. So maybe think slightly less than a standard U.S. cup.
Got it. Okay, so they've got their groups based on water intake. What did they find when they looked at weight changes over those 2 years? This is the really interesting part, I think.
It really is. They found a pretty clear pattern. People who drank more plain water at the start of the study, well, they generally lost more weight over the next year and also over the full 2 years.
Can you give us the numbers? Like, how much difference did it make?
Sure. So after 2 years, let's take the group drinking the least water, less than 2.5 servings. They're the baseline, basically zero weight change on average.
Okay.
Now compare that. The group drinking 2.5 to just under 5 servings. They lost, on average, about 0.8% of their body weight. The next group up, 5 to just under 7.5 servings, lost even more, 1.36%.
Right.
And the group drinking the most water, 7.5 servings or more daily. They saw the biggest drop, an average of 1.97% weight loss.
Wow, almost 2%. That actually sounds like quite a bit, just from, well, water intake. But wait, could it be other things? Like maybe those people also started exercising more or eating differently?
There's always the question with studies like this.
Yeah.
And the researchers were definitely aware of that. They did statistical adjustments.
Ah, okay.
They accounted for age, sex, physical activity levels, smoking, how closely people follow the Mediterranean diet. Remember, that was part of the bigger study. Total calories they ate, even total fluids from all sources.
And the link still held up?
It did. Even after adjusting for all those potential confounders, the association between higher water intake and greater weight loss remained. That makes the finding much stronger.
That really does suggest it's not just about swapping calories or drinking more overall fluid. Okay, what about waist circumference? Did water intake affect that too?
Yes, similar story there. The folks in the 2 highest water drinking groups, so 5 servings or more per day, they showed a significantly greater decrease in their waist circumference after 2 years compared to the lowest intake group.
Okay, and how much reduction are we talking about?
Compared to that lowest group, the 5 to under 7.5 servings group saw about a 1.11% reduction in waist circumference. And the highest intake group, 7.5 servings or more, saw an even larger average reduction, around 1.45%.
And again, that's after accounting for lifestyle factors and diet.
Yes, same adjustments were made. So the link seemed pretty robust for waist circumference, too.
So it really looks like more plain water was linked to both lower weight and a smaller waist in this specific group, older adults with metabolic syndrome.
That's what the data suggests, yes.
Now, the study went a step further, didn't it? They looked at theoretical swaps, like what if you replaced other drinks with water?
Exactly. They used mathematical modeling to estimate what might happen if someone swapped just 1 serving per day of various other drinks for 1 serving of plain water. It's a theoretical exercise, but quite insightful.
Okay, let's break those down. What did the models predict for weight changes after 1 year of these swaps?
All right, at the 1 year point, swapping out soups or vegetable juices for water was linked to a predicted weight loss of about 400 grams.
Hmm.
Replacing alcoholic drinks with water was associated with about 150 grams less weight on average, and they broke that down further.
Oh, yeah.
Replacing beer specifically was linked to maybe 230 grams reduction, but replacing spirits or mixed alcoholic drinks, that was linked to a much bigger predicted drop, around 700 grams.
Wow, okay. Anything else at 1 year?
Yes, replacing a category they called other beverages, this included things like plant-based milks, non-alcoholic beer, sorbets, that kind of thing. Replacing one serving of those with water was linked to about a 340-gram weight reduction.
Those are some noticeable potential impacts, especially that spirit swap. What about waist circumference changes from these swaps at 1 year?
The main significant finding for waist circumference at 1 year was again with the spirits and mixed alcoholic drinks. Replacing one serving of those with water was linked to a predicted decrease of just over a centimeter in waist size.
Interesting. Okay, let's fast forward to the 2 year mark. Did these predicted effects hold up, or did new ones appear?
Yeah, the models showed continued potential benefits at 2 years. For instance, replacing hot beverages, think coffee, tea, infusions with water, was linked to about 150 grams of weight reduction.
Likely due to added sugar or milk.
That's the likely reason, yes. Also, swapping out total dairy beverages for water showed a predicted reduction around 270 grams, and specifically, reduced fat dairy was similar, about 268 grams.
Okay.
Replacing soups and vegetable juices still showed a benefit at 2 years, around 270 grams reduction. And replacing those other beverages, again, was linked to a pretty significant predicted weight decrease, almost 400 grams.
So it really does seem like choosing water over a lot of common drinks could add up over time. Why is this happening? What are the potential mechanisms behind water helping with weight?
Well, there are a few likely candidates. A big one is probably satiety. Drinking water, especially before or with meals, can help you feel fuller.
Right, so you might just eat less overall.
Exactly. And then there's the simple calorie displacement. If you choose water instead of a drink with calories, sugary sodas, juice, even milky coffee, you're cutting calories right there.
That makes sense. But you mentioned they adjusted for total calorie intake in the main analysis.
That's right. And the association still held, which is intriguing because it suggests there might be something more going on than just replacing calories or feeling full.
Like what?
Well, there's some discussion about water potentially boosting metabolism slightly, something called water-induced thermogenesis. Basically, your body might burn a few extra calories processing the water. But the study authors themselves were cautious here, saying more research is really needed to confirm how significant that effect might be.
Okay, so maybe a factor, but maybe not the main driver. What about the alcohol findings? Swapping alcohol, especially spirits, seemed quite impactful.
Yeah, that aligns with what we generally know.
Yeah.
Alcoholic drinks, particularly beer and spirits, pack a caloric punch. Plus, they can sometimes increase appetite and mess with how your body handles fat. The researchers noted their results echoed other studies on beer and spirits, though, interestingly, not necessarily wine in this specific analysis.
And what about sugary drinks? I was a bit surprised that swapping those for water didn't show a significant weight change in the models here.
That was interesting. The authors speculated it might be because this particular group of older Spanish adults with metabolic syndrome didn't actually drink many sugary beverages to begin with.
So if the starting intake is low, swapping one serving doesn't make a huge difference in the overall diet.
Exactly. It highlights that the context and baseline habits really matter. This swap might be much more impactful in a population that drinks a lot of soda, for example.
That makes sense. And the results for diet drinks and dairy were a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, in this study, swapping artificially sweetened beverages, or dairy, for water didn't yield clear, statistically significant results for weight change. That actually differs from some other research out there, so it suggests that, we need more studies to really pin down the effects of those specific swaps.
Okay. And the hot beverages like coffee and tea, you mentioned the added extras are probably key there.
Almost certainly. It's rarely just plain black coffee or tea. People add sugar, cream, syrups. All those calories add up. Switching to plain water just cuts all of that out. It shows how those little additions can really contribute over time.
Definitely. And even the soups and vegetable juices often seen as healthy, but swapping them showed a benefit.
Right. While they can be healthy, portion size matters, and some might have added sodium or fats, or just be more calorie dense than plain water. So again, replacing them could lead to a calorie reduction.
And that diverse other beverages category, plant milks, non-alcoholic beer, the benefit there is likely just displacing some calories, whatever they might be.
That seems the most plausible explanation, given how varied that category was. Most things in there would have more calories than water, so the swap is generally favorable from an energy balance perspective.
This study definitely gives us a lot to think about, but like all research, it has its limits, right? What did the authors point out?
They were upfront about several limitations. One is that people's drinking habits might have changed over the 2 years, and they relied on the baseline assessment primarily.
Okay, yeah. Habits can drift.
Also, it's an observational study, so you can't completely rule out that some other unmeasured factor, some confounding variable, might be influencing the results.
Yeah.
And importantly, those beverage substitution results, they're based on statistical models, they're theoretical estimates. They aren't the same as a randomized trial where you actually tell one group to make the swap and compare them to a group that doesn't.
Right, so they need confirming in real-world intervention studies.
Ideally, yes. And finally, we have to keep coming back to who was studied. Older adults, overweight or obese, with metabolic syndrome in Spain. The findings might not perfectly translate to, say, younger, healthier populations or people in different cultural contexts.
Those are crucial caveats. So let's try to wrap this up. What's the main message you think our listeners should take away from this deep dive?
I think the core message is that this study adds weight to the idea that simply increasing your plain water intake could be positively associated with managing your weight and waistline, at least in a population similar to the one studied here. And perhaps even more practically, the modeling suggests that actively choosing water over other beverages, especially high-calorie ones like alcohol or potentially sugary drinks, maybe even some dairy or sweetened high drinks, could be a helpful strategy over the long term.
Yeah, for me, the real aha moment was seeing those substitution models. How swapping out even one drink a day, something you might not think much about, could theoretically add up to noticeable changes over a year or two.
Exactly. It underscores the power of those small, consistent daily habits. They really can accumulate.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to consider. Take a moment and think about what you typically drink each day. Are there places where swapping in a glass of plain water might be realistic for you?
Yeah, what small tweak could you make? It might lead to surprising benefits down the road. Maybe not just for weight, but potentially for overall health and how you feel.
It's definitely worth reflecting on your own habits. Perhaps do a little more reading or, chat with your doctor or a dietitian about how this might apply to you. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.